Okay, so the two most iconic elements of Game of Thrones are the ice zombies and the wall. Interesting on their own, but what makes them so iconic is their connection. Why does the wall exist? To keep the ice zombies out. You can't think of one without the other. But it goes further. The zombies are not in charge. The so-called whites or others are what actually raise the dead to make an army. Their reasoning unclear, but it very likely has something to do with weirwoods, a type of tree with white bark and red leaves. It is theorized that white walkers used to be spirits living in the weirwood net, a hive mind made up of all the weirwood trees. They were removed from this net by Green Seer, humans with the ability to possess living things and potentially more. Initially, they were tasked with protecting the net and the trees, but they eventually betrayed it, removed the whites, and took over the net to attain immortality by uploading their minds in the trees. They were given their magic by children of the forest, a sort of cross between elves and the Fae, also known as singers. They gave humans their magic and tasked them with protecting the net. Once humans took it over, they also gave bodies to the now stray spirits, corrupt form of the singer's magic that white workers used to create the ice zombies. And it's also likely weirwood and singer magic that went into the building of the wall. All of these things connected, which makes this world feel lived in. It makes it feel real and memorable. In Frieren, beyond the journey's end, humans exist. Dwarves also exist. They are on vaguely good terms with humans, but that's as much as we know. Elves also exist, and they are, to some extent, why humans have magic and mages, though not exactly. One elf took as her student one human, who then laid the foundations of humanity's magic. In Game of Thrones, singers gave humans the power of green sight so they can act as guardians of the woods. In Frieren, humans got magic because an elf was bored. In Game of Thrones, green seers are a matter of blood. The singers mingled with humans to create the green seers. Some families, like the Starks, have more singer blood, so more of their people have the green gift. But in Frieren, humans seems to have always had the ability for magic, they just didn't learn it yet. Later, they even adapted magic from other races, like the demons race, so their connection to elves is actually very limited. The demons are man-eating monsters that evolved to look and sound like humans. This is one of the strongest connections in this show. But we never learn why they are so hell-bent on eating humans. They've been at war with each other for thousands of years for no clear reason. If it's just about food, it makes no sense to insist on preying on humans instead of any other easier food to acquire. Canonically, they can eat other things. They are magical, so you could have it be a matter of feeding on mana, but races like elves have much more mana. If that was the reason, there should be at least some mention of elves being especially desirable. But there is none. Quite the opposite. They are at times treated with indifference, instead of making them out to be a rare tasty meal. These are all the main elements of the world of Frieren, and they are hardly even connected. With Game of Thrones, I haven't even left the north. I haven't even mentioned dragons. A front and center element of the story, entire dynasties revolved around the use of dragons in battle, and they played a huge role during the Weirwood Net takeover. They are an indicator of the health of the magic in the world. When dragons are strong, magic is strong. Frieren also has dragons. We get to see one for the length of one episode. It's not connected to anything. It's of no significance before or after, and even in the time the show is aware of its existence, it only really works as a monster of the weak type creature for the protagonist to fight. It represents nothing, it means nothing. You could replace it with any other monster with any other attributes, and nothing would change. It's there as an obstacle and nothing more. Almost nothing in this world is connected. It's all disjointed and only exists for as long as the current chapter needs it. There's some ghost type monster that appears for half an episode, never mentioned before or after. In the same episode with the dragon, there's some plant monster that makes an appearance for all of 10 seconds, never mentioned before or after. And that just keeps on happening. It's not necessarily a problem. It can be fun to throw a line out there with huge implications. But that's not what's happening here, because we know next to nothing about most of this, and also very little about the main creatures like the demons. When everything could be anything, all of it is nothing. In A Song of Ice and Fire, if you remove one of those elements, the repercussions are almost always huge. Remove weirwoods, and you have no wights, no zombies, so no wall either since it's not needed. Remove the singers, and White Walkers wouldn't have bodies or armies of zombies, so there'd be no wall again. Not that they would need bodies, since humans wouldn't have the green gift and couldn't have thrown them out of the net. Weirwoods would also look different, since it's likely their current appearance is a result of their actions. Remove humans, and again, no wights, no zombies or wall, no red weirwoods, and even the singers would benefit because currently they're about to go extinct due to humans. In Frieren, if you have no humans, you probably have no demons, though they might still exist, albeit different, because they could feed on elves or dwarves who are not all that different from humans, and they do canonically fight with those as well. Remove elves, and humans would have some setbacks in terms of magic, but they could still have it. They did adapt some magic from demons. Elves are not crucial to their abilities. Take away dwarves, and I'm not sure what even changes. Some of the story details, but the world hardly changes. Take away dragons, and for sure nothing in the world changes. The world of Frieren is incredibly insular. Nothing matters outside its immediate surroundings. But the real problem with the world of Frieren is that it doesn't really make sense. Demons as a world show signs of being an incredibly poorly planned out concept. Their core motivation of eating humans is hardly ever explored, but is the reason why they evolved to look like humans and even talk like humans, right? So why on earth do they have horns? Bit of a giveaway in it. On the topic of looks, the first demon we see in the show is like 7 meters tall with a face made out of an old couch. Why does he look like that? My guess is that since Homeboy appeared quite early on, he was probably written before the author figured out the whole evolved to look like humans backstory. What characters say and the reality we are presented with are very different. It's very inconsistent. A big deal is made about demons being solitary creatures. They leave their young to fend for themselves and only act for themselves. Yet they have societies. They field armies and fight wars. These are aspects of social creatures. Sharks are solitary creatures. Sharks don't fight wars. Chimps fight wars. Ants fight wars. Social creatures fight wars. A big deal is made out of them supposedly not actually understanding the words they use. A demon used the word mother without knowing what it means. Another one asked her boss what father means. But that's the thing. She asked. Demons have conversations all the time. They often mention orders they received. They have to understand words to some degree. Frieren says the only reason demons speak is to trick people. If so, they should never talk to each other, and they could never have functional societies. Not if they are also supposed to be non-social creatures. Bees don't have speech and they can build nests just fine. But for one, they always act as part of the group. And they do actually communicate in other ways. Be it movement, patterns, or in pheromones. The demons of Frieren just can't possibly function as depicted. And it's quite a shame because lore-accurate ones would be terrifying. Imagine demons that actually never talk with each other. Only when humans are around. How uncanny would that be? But as nonsensical as their portrayal is, the magic system is worse. Near the end of the first season, we get a new rule. Apparently, magic is about visualization. If you can visualize something, then you can do it. Excuse me, but what? How does that even work? There's a chick that managed to cut in half a supposed defense magic expert. How exactly did she do that? Did she just visualize it more? This would snowball out of proportions incredibly quickly. There should be more people with high self-esteem that just throw planets at each other. Does this have any limitations? It should, but a big point is made out of this chick's achievement being out of the ordinary. The magic system of Frieren was already a quite soft one, but this straight up moves it into it is whatever the author wants level. You could have it as a sort of soft check, besides the other needed skills. If you can't imagine it, you can't do it. But making it so that if you can imagine it, then you can do it, means you open up a whole lot of plot holes. They say, and I quote, if one is a mage, they can tell from a single glance that no fancy spell can get through that cloak. Humans cannot escape that, as long as they are intelligent beings. Well, no. Clearly, if you know that visualization is what it takes, you should understand that you can do it, that it is possible. And even if you can't, when you see someone like this chick, a nobody, manage to do it, you should then realize you too can do it. And after you manage it, get some self-confidence, start seeing yourself be able to do even more stuff. See how this should snowball sooner or later? There should be more people like her doing wild stuff all the time, causing other people to go and do wild stuff. This being such a hard check does not work out. Earlier in the season, Frieren talks about how there's no such thing as resurrection magic. But does this rule mean that you can actually resurrect people? If not, why not? What from the show means you can't do it? As per the rules established, quite literally everything is possible. This is a very problematic magic system and makes the world of Frieren very inconsistent. But, of course, the world itself is rarely the end goal of world building. Usually the reason you create a world is to be able to tell your story in it. Not always, but often. An example I really like of using your world in the service of your story comes from Warhammer 40k. It's not entirely canon, but that hardly matters for this discussion. The long and short of it is that an orc warlord launched an attack to avenge the death of a human. If you're not a Warhammer fan, this probably means very little to you. Only if you are familiar with the lore do you understand the gravity of what I just said. So here's what's up. Orcs are an old, degenerate bioweapon. They are a sort of fungus. They multiply to spores, so that's not something they have to concern themselves with. Said spores can grow into a type of vegetation that the rest can feed on. So by merely existing in an area, those two problems are dealt with. Because they were made as weapons, they really enjoy fighting and very rarely are they scared of anything. So of the 4 F's of nature, the fighting orcs really only have one. Their life is entirely dedicated to war. Add to that eons of degeneration that made them kinda stupid, and then hierarchy and society become entirely based on war. Your strength and ability to lead others in battle are what dictates your rank. Because of this, humans are looked down on by orcs. They are seen as weak and stupid because they concern themselves with things other than war, which to orcs makes no sense. In picture enters Gazgul, an orc warlord, the highest ranking orc from billions of contenders, unrivaled among his ranks in strength and intelligence. This orc, the top of this crude society based on violence and war, was so impressed by a human as to mourn his death in the only way an orc ever could. Through war. The impact of that statement hits you directly proportional to how strongly you feel the concepts it's based on, how single-minded the orcs are, how war-minded they are, how much they look down on humans, how brutal they are towards humans. These are all world-building elements that make the story meaningful. In Frieren, most such world-building rules are explained away rather than utilized. A rule we get early on is that the longer a mage trades, the more mana he has and the stronger he generally is. Frieren trained for at least 1,000 years, yet they constantly underline the fact that this does not make her invincible. Good mages can still beat her, so near the end when some guy we see for all of 30 seconds manages to wound her, well, it's meaningless. If Frieren was made out to be borderline invincible, this would have painted this guy as incredibly strong and talented. But it's not. It's a thing that can happen. He's not special. The event is not special. It was a roll of the dice. Doesn't even take a nat 20. An 8 is probably enough. When that's a thing that can happen, well, anything just might. Earlier on, Purple managed to kill a demon that's supposed to be somewhat strong and high ranking. But again, it's very much a thing that can happen. If the world was stricter on how important the advantage of training is, then it could have been a meaningful moment, be it for character building or world building. Instead, it's just kind of a thing that happens. Instead of building up to anything, the rules seem more so set up to be able to have anything happen at any given time. If for a chapter Frieren needs to win, she can win. If she needs to lose, she can lose. And worse even, when it comes to rules that the show does make use of, they're incredibly clunkily tacked on. Often they're not even really needed, and they even detract from other rules. Frieren has a skill issue. When she attacks, she can't keep up her mana detection ability. So when they have to fight a mimic with her exact powers, Purple comes up with a plan where they will use this flaw of hers. But this is just an overly complicated version of you distract her, I'll attack when I see an opening. Parasite, the anime not the movie, has a magic system based on shape-shifting parasites that attack each other with very fast-moving blades and tentacles. No mana, no magic, and it has a scene like this. Frieren has characters do an exposition dump for this mechanic right before the battle, and it's not even needed. Worse even, it ignores a plot point that was already introduced. They make a point about Purple being very stealthy ever since she was a child. That's the exact type of thing you should be calling back on. So instead of introducing this mechanic, they could have simply went like this. Hey guys, I should distract the mimic and someone should magic punch it when an opening appears. Who should do it? Oh, I know, the chick known for how stealthy she is. That would have been the logical way to make use of your world. But no, instead of this, a bunch of characters use exposition, the worst kind of storytelling device, to introduce a new mechanic that's not even needed after the problem it solves arises, and it even takes away from the previously established material. When you watch a puppet show, you know that what you are watching is puppeteers moving those puppets. There is no changing that, but you can still hide the strings. Out of sight is out of mind, so the more you can hide it, the better off you are, because it's more likely for the people to enjoy the show. It makes it easier for the show to pull you in. Worldbuilding is no different. You want to hide your strings. One part of that means making your world seem believable, lived in, logical. But it's also important to make it seem like you're telling your story in a world and you're not making a world for your story. In terms of technique, the way you weave your world building into your story, it's generally better to take elements that you'll need and introduce them early on, because it makes it feel like you are telling a story within the confines of a world, even if what you actually did was to create those confines yourself. When the orcs of 40k were first invented, nobody knew that eventually Commissar Yarrick is gonna come up. There, the story is actually written within a world created by different people a while back. But even if that's not really the case for you, there's still ways of making it seem that way, like introducing certain elements and rules early on and inserting them in a way that doesn't make it obvious that it'll be needed later on. Boss Level actually did an oddly good job at it. I quite recommend it for that reason alone, even if the rest of the story is so-so. Frieren, however, has a habit of introducing the elements it needs after the problem, which is like writing a Sherlock Holmes story where the mystery is solved with clues we get after we're told who did it. Just doesn't make for a good watch. And it's truly a shame, because there is some good potential here that's just being wasted.